The mentor doesn't start with a welcome. He starts with a reality check. The world won't save you. If you don't take control of your mind, no one will do it for you. This statement comes as a shock, but it's exactly the shock the viewer needed. Because, deep down, he knows he's wasted too much time waiting for external changes. The inner peace he seeks was never out there. It has always been inside them, dormant, waiting to be awakened. He continues with an uncomfortable truth. Most people spend their entire lives reacting, complaining, running away, and then they wonder why they never found strength. This statement provokes, divides opinions, but reveals something that no one has the courage to say. Mental toughness is not born out of comfort. It is born out of the courage to face one's own mind. Self-discipline does not appear by magic. It appears when a person decides to stop negotiating with themselves. And that decision will transform everything from now on. The mentor looks straight at the viewer, as if seeing into their soul, and says, if you continue living on autopilot, you will waste the only life you have. It's strong. It's hard. But it's real. This clarity awakens an urgency that the viewer feels in their chest. They realize they can't keep waiting. Stoic identity begins to emerge at that very moment, when they accept that they need to change. And that change begins with how they react to the world. He provokes them even more. You suffer less from the things that happen, and more from the dramatic story you invent about them. This revelation disarms the viewer. They realize that they are carrying burdens that are not theirs. The emotional control they have always wanted begins to form in this awareness. Inner peace arises when they see that they don't have to fight the whole world. They just need to learn to command themselves. And that is what they will finally learn here. The mentor ends the introduction with a phrase that touches the hearts of those who hear it. Within you there is a strength you have never accessed, and if you don't wake up now, you may never wake up. The music rises, the atmosphere changes, and the viewer feels in their skin that this video is not just another video. It is a turning point. From here, he will discover how to build an unshakable mind, cultivate real self-discipline, and find inner peace that nothing can destroy. The journey begins now, and it will change everything. The mentor always begins by explaining that life has not signed a contract with anyone, and this is liberating when it finally sinks in. He speaks calmly, almost smiling, because he knows that this truth brings inner peace to those who understand it. When people stop expecting automatic rewards, they awaken a rare mental toughness. Self-discipline grows because the person realizes that everything depends on them. And without realizing it, this understanding ignites a powerful Stoic identity within them. He often jokes that many people think the universe wakes up thinking about how to ruin their day. And then he comments, with that light humor, that the universe doesn't even know you exist. When this sinks in, an emotional control is born that changes everything. People stop personalizing problems and start dealing with them as facts, not offenses. This simple gesture creates inner peace, and it opens space for a new mindset to emerge. The mentor likes to remind us that, for Stoics, chaos is the rule. The world is unpredictable, but not hostile. And when people see things this way, their mental toughness grows as if they were receiving daily training. They understand that self-discipline is not about controlling the world, but about controlling themselves. This understanding strengthens Stoic identity, and it creates a lightness that only those who live this practice know. He explains that expecting justice from the universe is like wanting hot ice cream. It doesn't make sense. Life follows its flow, with or without our preferences. Those who accept this develop impressive emotional control. Inner peace is born when a person realizes that reality does not change just because they want it to. This maturity creates space for smarter choices, and it paves the way for realizing another, deeper type of control. The mentor always emphasizes that too much expectation generates unnecessary suffering. When people reduce their expectations and increase their initiative, life changes. They unlock a mental toughness they didn't know they had. There's more self-discipline, because they stop wasting energy expecting from the world what they need to build. Inner peace arrives silently but consistently, and it leaves a taste that there's a next step that they have yet to discover. He cites practical examples. Someone who used to complain about their luck, but turned the tables by stopping waiting for miracles and starting to create opportunities. This change in attitude is pure Stoic identity. The person starts to act with emotional control, without drama, and mental toughness grows because they face challenges without thinking that the world is against them. Self-discipline is strengthened, and the mentor leaves it open that there is even more depth to this philosophy. When someone says, "Life isn't fair," he smiles slightly and replies, "Who said it should be?" This provocation makes the person rethink everything. They realize that the search for absolute justice only leads to frustration, and by abandoning this illusion, they gain inner peace. Emotional control becomes stronger because they react less and act more. This is how mental toughness flourishes, and the ground begins to be prepared for an even greater teaching. He comments that many people live disappointed not because life is difficult, but because they expected it to be easy. This internal friction causes suffering. When people accept that the world owes nothing to anyone, this tension disappears. Self-discipline emerges. Stoic identity consolidates, firm and simple, and inner peace begins to become a natural state. There's a clear sense that the person is only at the beginning of the journey. The mentor teaches that believing that life owes you something creates a cycle of silent victimization, and victimization is the mortal enemy of mental toughness. He encourages replacing this attitude with personal responsibility, and that changes everything. Self-discipline grows because the person stops waiting and starts building. Emotional control improves because they react less emotionally to challenges. And he lets slip that, in the next step, the focus changes completely. At the end of this topic, the mentor reinforces that accepting that the world has no obligations to you is not pessimism, it is freedom. The person discovers that they have much more power than they imagined. They create inner peace with their own hands. They develop a Stoic identity that resists chaos. And this new vision prepares them to understand something even deeper: what really depends on them and what does not. The mentor begins by saying that, in practice, there are only two drawers in life: the drawer of what you control and the drawer of what you don't control. He says this with a slight smile, because he knows that when people understand this, something changes inside them. An inner peace arises that comes from clarity. Self-discipline grows because it focuses energy only where it really has influence. And this is where mental toughness begins to strengthen almost automatically. He likes to show that thoughts and actions are the territory where the individual really rules. He compares it to tending a garden. You can't control the rain, but you can control where you plant, what you water, and what you prune. This metaphor awakens emotional control because the person sees that they don't need to go to war with the wind. Stoic identity is born precisely from this recognition of what depends on them, and this prepares them for something even deeper. The mentor always plays a little trick. He asks, "Do you control the behavior of others?" The person answers no, and he replies, "Then why do you suffer as if you did?" This reflection breaks down emotional resistance. From there, inner peace begins to flourish. Self-discipline becomes more practical because the person stops wasting energy on invisible battles. Mental toughness grows because they focus on where they really have power, and he leaves it in the air that this perception changes the way they deal with any challenge. He explains that when someone reacts to traffic, the weather, or other people's opinions, they are giving up control of their own emotional state, and that sabotages emotional control. By regaining this internal responsibility, the person rebuilds their Stoic identity. They realize that their peace of mind cannot depend on the instability of the world. This maturity creates inner peace, and it paves the way to understanding the art of acceptance, which is just ahead. The mentor loves to give practical examples. He says, "If you want to improve your mind, read Marcus Aurelius. If you want to improve your body, train. If you want to improve your income, study real finance like Treasury Direct or good books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad." This type of guidance reinforces self-discipline. Mental toughness appears because the person starts to act instead of complaining, and emotional control arises when they realize they have options. This sets the stage for the next level of this journey. He often teaches that controlling thoughts does not mean ignoring emotions, but rather guiding them. He says that a thought is not an order, It is just a suggestion. When a person understands this, they develop powerful inner peace. Stoic identity is strengthened because they begin to see themselves as the commander of their own mind. Self-discipline grows naturally, and deep down, they realize that this skill will be essential for the next teaching. The mentor says that taking control is like adjusting the steering wheel of your own car. The road may be bad, but the steering wheel is in your hands. This simple image reinforces emotional control. Mental toughness arises when a person understands that they do not control the road, but they do control the direction. By internalizing this, they activate practical, everyday self-discipline, and inner peace grows because they do not freak out with every pothole in the road. Something important begins to emerge from this vision. One of his favorite phrases is, "You control the action, the world controls the outcome." This separation avoids unnecessary frustration. When a person understands this, a deep emotional relief is born. Self-discipline becomes smarter because it focuses on the process. Stoic identity expands because it now acts without attachment to what it cannot control. Mental toughness accompanies this growth, and he hints that understanding acceptance will be the next leap. He likes to remind us that much anxiety stems precisely from the desire to control the uncontrollable. When a person lets go of this rope, inner peace arises almost immediately. Emotional control appears because they stop fighting against the wind. Self-discipline is directed toward attitudes that really matter, and Stoic identity becomes stronger and more real. Deep down, this understanding opens the door to the emotional freedom of the next topic. In the end, the mentor reinforces that taking control of one's own mind is a daily choice. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens little by little. This process creates consistent mental toughness. Inner peace grows, even on difficult days. Self-discipline becomes a lens that organizes life, and Stoic identity arises as a consequence of practice, never of discourse. But there is an even more liberating step, understanding that accepting is not surrendering. The mentor begins by explaining that many people confuse acceptance with giving up, as if accepting something meant raising the white flag. He smiles and says that, in fact, acceptance is a strategy. When people accept reality, they save mental and emotional energy. This is the basis of inner peace. Self-discipline grows because they stop fighting against what cannot be changed, and mental toughness begins to flourish in this fertile ground. He compares acceptance to adjusting sails during a strong wind. You can't control the wind, but you can control how you position the boat. This image helps people understand that emotional control is not about denying emotions, but directing them. Stoic identity arises when they realize that they can navigate even in difficult waters. Acceptance is not sitting back and doing nothing. It is rowing in the right direction. And this mindset opens the door to a deeper transformation. The mentor points out that acceptance does not mean liking the situation. He says that no one likes pain, loss, or frustration, but everyone can choose how to react. That choice creates inner peace. Self-discipline is born when a person reallocates energy from protest to action. Mental toughness grows because they learn to move forward even when the world doesn't cooperate, and that prepares them to interpret life with much more emotional clarity. He likes to use practical examples. He says, if you've lost a job, accepting it doesn't mean applauding the situation. It means acknowledging the fact and deciding on the next step. This activates emotional control. The person understands that despair does not create opportunities. Stoic identity is strengthened when they take a deep breath, reorganize their ideas, and create solutions. And inner peace appears because they stop fighting reality. This view opens doors to even greater understanding. The mentor explains that emotional resistance to the inevitable is like trying to push a wall. It only causes fatigue. When a person accepts that certain things are simply the way they are, they regain their inner strength. Self-discipline improves because they focus only on what can be done now. Mental toughness increases when they let go of illusory control, and this liberation begins to change the way they interpret everything around them. He comments on people who spend years trapped in resentment, as if reliving the past would change the present. This stubbornness drains energy and destroys emotional control. Acceptance, on the other hand, restores lightness. Inner peace comes when a person lets go of emotional chains. Stoic identity grows because she begins to live with more presence. And this awareness prepares her to see that much of her suffering is chosen, not imposed. The mentor also reminds her that accepting does not mean settling. He says, accepting is making space in the mind. Acting is filling that space with intention. This combination creates self-discipline. Mental toughness is strengthened because they learn to act even without a guarantee of results. Inner peace appears because there is no longer any internal struggle. And this mental alignment awakens perceptions that lead to the next Stoic understanding. He uses the example of someone facing an illness, saying that accepting the condition is not giving up on a cure, but organizing the mind to better face it. The person creates emotional control when they stop asking why and start asking what now. This strengthens their Stoic identity. Self-discipline grows because they do what needs to be done, even when it hurts. This silent strength paves the way for another teaching about suffering and drama. The mentor reinforces that accepting reality removes the invisible weight of unrealistic expectations. The person begins to see situations clearly, without emotional distortions. This generates inner peace. Self-discipline becomes more precise because they understand what really depends on them. Mental toughness increases when they stop fighting the inevitable. And this new clarity points to the need to interpret events with much more wisdom. In the end, he says that acceptance is emotional maturity, not submission. It is a way of freeing the mind to act intelligently. This attitude creates emotional control. Inner peace grows because the person finally aligns with reality. Stoic identity is strengthened as a result of this alignment. And this new vision opens the way for the next insight. Not everything is tragedy. Much of suffering arises from interpretation. The mentor usually starts this topic with a laugh, because he knows that many people turn minor annoyances into emotional storms. He says that people spill water on the floor and act as if they have lost everything. This dramatization robs anyone of their inner peace. Mental toughness weakens when every detail becomes a giant problem, and Stoic identity only grows when people learn to differentiate between discomfort and real suffering. This perception opens the door to a new way of looking at life. He states that there is a huge difference between feeling pain and creating an internal drama about it, and that often the drama hurts more than the event itself. By understanding this, people develop emotional control because they recognize that interpretation is more powerful than fact. Self-discipline appears when they choose to interpret things more rationally. This generates inner peace almost automatically. And, little by little, they begin to realize that they have spent a long time exaggerating imaginary battles. The mentor loves to recall the classic phrase, "It's not the event that upsets you, but what you say about it." He says this calmly, to create impact. When people internalize this idea, a powerful mental toughness is born. They learn to stop before reacting emotionally. Self-discipline grows because she creates smarter mental filters. And Stoic identity is strengthened by realizing that controlling the internal story is a superpower that few have mastered. He gives practical examples. Someone who received criticism at work and immediately turns it into, "I'm going to be fired. My life is over." He laughs and explains that this kind of thinking is pure dramatic fiction. When people learn to see criticism as just information, they create emotional control. Inner peace grows because the emotional impact diminishes. And mental toughness flourishes when they respond rationally. This change paves the way for a deeper understanding. The mentor explains that dramatizing life is an efficient way to waste energy that should be used to improve one's life. He says that every emotional exaggeration is an invisible thief. Upon realizing this, the person develops self-discipline. Inner peace appears when they stop inflating problems. And Stoic identity gains strength because they begin to live more soberly. This is the kind of maturity that leads to true emotional freedom. He comments that people with mental toughness do not let small noises turn into big storms. They filter, interpret, breathe, and act. Those who practice this naturally create emotional control. Inner peace becomes more stable because life ceases to be a stage for tragedies. And this change in perspective helps people see the world more clearly. Gradually, they realize that the drama that consumed their energy was optional. The mentor also points out that dramatization creates an emotional addiction. It's like seeking adrenaline in many tragedies. He teaches that the antidote is awareness, identifying, questioning, and reframing thoughts. This practice develops self-discipline. Mental toughness increases when people dismantle each exaggeration, and Stoic identity is strengthened because they learn to live with more truth than imagination. This paves the way for the next teaching. He offers a reflection. If every little frustration becomes a crisis, how will you deal with life's big challenges? This affects the person. They realize that they need to save emotional energy for what really matters. This insight creates inner peace. Emotional control grows because they stop reacting impulsively, and mental toughness develops by focusing on the essentials. This mental change paves the way for another fundamental point about conscious reactions. The mentor reinforces that living by dramatizing events creates a cycle of unnecessary stress. He teaches that by observing events without exaggeration, people create mental space for solutions. This drives self-discipline because they start to act instead of panicking. Inner peace grows because the mind becomes less burdened, and this ability shapes a stronger Stoic identity, until they realize that the next step is to learn to react consciously. At the end of this topic, he says that abandoning drama does not make you cold, it makes you wise. People stop living in a movie and start living in reality. Mental toughness grows with this inner sincerity. Emotional control becomes natural, almost automatic. Inner peace becomes a daily consequence. And the next insight is inevitable, understanding the power that exists in pausing before responding. The mentor begins by explaining that the true power of human beings lies in the brief pause between stimulus and response. He says that this pause is like a door that few people walk through, but that changes absolutely everything. When a person manages to breathe before reacting, true emotional control is born. Inner peace stabilizes because the mind does not become hostage to immediate emotions, and mental toughness is strengthened every time they choose to act with intention, not by automatic reflex. He says that everyone feels anger, frustration, or sadness. No one is immune. The difference is what you do with it. When people understand that feelings do not control actions, they begin to awaken self-discipline. This awareness creates a more mature Stoic identity because they begin to see themselves as the protagonist of their responses. Inner peace grows because they are no longer driven by emotions, and this emotional maturity will open doors to deeper lessons. The mentor always uses a practical example. Someone receives a harsh message on WhatsApp and immediately wants to respond with the same intensity. He smiles and says that this is the perfect moment to practice emotional control. When the person waits a few minutes, reads it again, breathes, and responds calmly, they choose who they want to be. This choice develops mental toughness, and this small daily exercise creates a strength that becomes natural over time. He comments that reacting impulsively is like throwing gasoline on a lit match. Damage is guaranteed. On the contrary, responding calmly is like throwing water. It solves the problem. It doesn't make it worse. When a person internalizes this, they create inner peace. Self-discipline grows because they begin to prioritize effectiveness over winning arguments. And Stoic identity gains depth because they act with wisdom, not with emotional turmoil. This practice will prepare their heart to deal with even more dangerous emotions. The mentor explains that truly strong people are not those who shout the loudest, but those who manage to remain stable when everything around them collapses. This stability comes from emotional control. Mental toughness is built when a person realizes that they don't have to react to the world, but can choose each response. Inner peace is born from this choice, and this silent strength paves the way for a deeper understanding of the poison that is anger. He points out that many people regret what they say when they are angry, but almost no one regrets what they say when they are calm. This contrast teaches the importance of self-discipline. When a person trains themselves to respond after composing themselves, they create a more stable Stoic identity. Emotional control grows because they do not allow fleeting emotions to dictate their destiny. And this skill will be crucial in the next topic, where we will talk about the true nature of anger. The mentor gives a simple exercise. Before responding to any unpleasant situation, the person should take 3 deep breaths and ask themselves, does my response improve or worsen the situation? This habit builds mental toughness. It reinforces that no one is born controlled. It is training. Inner peace arises when the person sees that they do not need to get involved in every conflict. And self-discipline grows because they learn to choose battles wisely. He comments that most emotional problems do not come from what happens, but from what the person adds to the event. Impulsive interpretation creates extra pain. When they observe before responding, they take the power out of the impulse. This generates emotional control. Stoic identity is strengthened because it creates wiser responses. Mental toughness appears in every conscious choice, and this practice will be essential for the next point. The mentor points out that if people control their response, they control their destiny. Responding impulsively is allowing the world to decide who you will be at that moment. Responding consciously is taking the wheel of your own life. This perception creates inner peace. Self-discipline becomes natural because they start to act with intention. Stoic identity becomes more authentic, and this awareness opens space to explore the root of impulsivity, anger. In the end, he says that responding consciously is a way to protect your energy and peace of mind. When you understand this, everything changes. Mental toughness grows because you become the master of your own emotions. Emotional control becomes stronger with each situation faced with clarity. Inner peace becomes a constant state. And now you are ready to understand why anger is one of the most dangerous poisons of the human mind. The mentor begins by explaining that anger is an emotion that promises much but delivers little. He says that it makes people feel a false sense of strength, like a fire that explodes quickly and burns everything around it, including the person who lit the match. When people understand this, they begin to develop emotional control. Inner peace appears when they learn to differentiate between real strength and emotional outbursts. And mental toughness grows because they stop acting as a hostage to this silent poison. He recalls that Seneca said that anger is a short-lived madness. The mentor reinforces that, in this madness, people lose clarity, logic, and even dignity. By recognizing this, they begin to awaken self-discipline. Stoic identity grows because they see themselves as someone who chooses lucidity, not chaos. Inner peace is strengthened when they eliminate this internal saboteur. And this liberation paves the way for deeper insights into life and death. The mentor gives a simple example. Someone hits your car in traffic. If you react immediately, overcome by anger, you will make everything worse. You may say something that will haunt you later. But if you breathe, observe, and resolve the situation calmly, the problem ends where it began. This is emotional control in practice. Mental toughness appears when a person makes decisions based on rationality, and self-discipline grows because she learns to protect her own energy. He says that anger always comes at a high price. It drains time, health, and lucidity. Those who live with anger live tense, always ready to explode. This destroys inner peace and prevents any stoic identity from growing. When people realize this emotional cost, they begin to choose smarter paths. And this change opens space for deeper reflections on the real value of life. The mentor comments that anger does not need to be exterminated, but educated. He explains that feeling anger is natural, being controlled by it is a choice. When people realize this, they create emotional control. Mental toughness grows because they learn to use emotion as information, not as direction. Self-discipline is strengthened because they begin to choose behaviors instead of reactions. And this prepares the mind for a more conscious level of existence. He suggests practical exercises. When you feel anger, write down everything you are thinking, but don't send it. Don't say it. Don't publish it. Read it a few minutes later. The impact transforms perception. This exercise generates inner peace because she realizes that the impulse was greater than the actual problem. Stoic identity is strengthened every time. She does not let herself be dominated. And this clarity will be important for dealing with the awareness of finitude in the next topic. The mentor points out that anger is often a cry for help from the mind itself, showing that something needs to be adjusted. When a person observes this calmly, They create emotional control. Mental toughness increases because they stop reacting blindly. Self-discipline grows when they start treating anger as a messenger, not a general. And this internal change paves the way for deeper reflections on purpose. He reminds us that anger distances us from wisdom. It extinguishes reason and ignites the ego. People dominated by anger make decisions that take years to rebuild. This impact destroys inner peace. But when a person chooses calmness, the Stoic identity grows like a tree that resists strong winds. Mental toughness is strengthened when she chooses to be greater than the impulse. And this emotional strength naturally introduces the next Stoic point. The mentor explains that the world will always offer reasons for anger, injustices, frustrations, human failures. But carrying anger is like taking poison and hoping someone else suffers. This realization is liberating. Self-discipline grows because they choose to protect their own mind. Emotional control emerges as an inevitable consequence. Inner peace becomes more solid. And this emotional maturity prepares the person to face the reality of life, death. At the end of this topic, the mentor says that controlling anger does not weaken you. It empowers you. You do not lose power. You gain real power. Mental toughness is established when a person manages to choose calm in moments of chaos. Stoic identity grows when they learn to act with dignity, not with outbursts. And this maturity opens the perfect gateway to the next Stoic insight, Memento Mori. The mentor speaks about this topic with a calm seriousness that makes people stop and pay attention. He says that remembering death is not morbid, it is clarity. When someone understands that time is limited, a deep inner peace is born because they stop wasting energy on nonsense. Mental toughness grows because the person begins to act with purpose. And this awareness reinforces a Stoic identity that lives for what matters, not what distracts. He explains that Memento Mori works as an alarm clock for priorities. When people internalize that each day could be their last, they don't procrastinate on their own dreams. This develops self-discipline because they stop putting off life. Inner peace is born because they stop worrying about other people's opinions. And this emotional maturity opens up space to see life with more sincerity and intention. The mentor gives practical examples. Someone who lives in fear of starting a project realizes that the time they fear losing is the same time that will pass anyway. By recognizing this, they create emotional control. Mental toughness increases because fear loses strength in the face of the truth of finitude. Self-discipline grows when they make decisions aligned with what they really want. And this clarity brings them even closer to Stoic practice. He comments that remembering death does not take away the joy of life. On the contrary, it brings it back. He says that those who think they will live forever waste time, but those who remember that they are mortal enjoy every moment. This perception creates inner peace. Stoic identity grows because the person lives more in the present. Self-discipline becomes natural when she understands the value of every hour. And this awareness begins to quietly transform her way of life. The mentor likes to provoke with uncomfortable questions. If you died today, would you be proud of how you lived yesterday? This reflection stirs people. They realize that small irritations lose importance when compared to the greatness of limited time. This generates emotional control. Mental toughness grows because they face life with more courage. And inner peace becomes a natural consequence of this depth. He explains that Memento Mori is also a tool for gratitude. Knowing that nothing is guaranteed, people begin to value simple things: a hot coffee, a hug, a moment of silence. This appreciation builds a more human Stoic identity. Self-discipline appears because they take better care of themselves and their own choices. And this deliberate action paves the way for even deeper reflections on integrity and purpose. The mentor recalls that great leaders and sages used Memento Mori as a compass. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, reminding himself of this daily. He knew that this vision created absolute focus. Mental toughness grows when a person understands that they cannot control time, but they can control the intensity with which they live. Inner peace appears when they stop running away from reality. And this inner courage opens space for the next lesson. He teaches that death is not an enemy, it is an advisor. It reminds us that life needs direction. When a person accepts this with serenity, they create emotional control. Self-discipline grows because they stop living on autopilot. Stoic identity is strengthened when they choose to live authentically. And this perspective completely changes their relationship with the world around them. The mentor reinforces that, knowing that life is short, people stop getting lost in drama, gossip, and useless conflicts. They start to filter everything. This filtering creates inner peace. Mental toughness grows because they direct their energy only to what is worthwhile. Self-discipline becomes almost organic because time takes on real weight. And this lucidity naturally leads to another Stoic view of what really matters: integrity. At the end of this topic, the mentor says that remembering death is remembering life. It is this contrast that awakens courage, presence, and intention. Inner peace grows when a person accepts their own finitude. Mental toughness is strengthened by this truth. Self-discipline aligns with purpose. And now she is ready to discover that, for the Stoics, being whole has always been more important than being happy. The mentor begins by saying that, for Stoics, happiness is not something to be pursued. It is something that arises as a consequence of living with integrity. He explains that when people try to be happy at any cost, they run in circles. But when they try to be whole, they find inner peace. Mental toughness grows because they begin to act according to their own conscience, not out of a desire for pleasure. And Stoic identity is strengthened in this silent consistency. He comments that many people confuse happiness with euphoria, but euphoria is temporary. Integrity is permanent. When someone commits to self-discipline, their decisions align with what they believe. This creates emotional control, because they are not guided by the ups and downs of the moment. Inner peace arises because they know they are living truthfully. And this solid foundation prepares the mind to live with more consistency. The mentor likes to use a simple example: someone who wants to wake up early to train, but chooses to sleep longer to feel momentary pleasure. He says that this person chooses immediate happiness, but loses inner strength. When they choose to fulfill what they promised themselves, they choose to be whole. This develops mental toughness. Self-discipline grows, and Stoic identity takes shape with every consistent decision. He explains that being whole means acting the same way when someone is watching and when no one is. This kind of attitude creates inner peace because it eliminates internal conflicts. The person stops carrying guilt for broken commitments. This increases emotional control, as they feel in control of their own life. And this consistency awakens a moral strength that will be fundamental in the next point. The mentor points out that being whole also means facing discomfort when necessary. He says that the greatest growth happens when a person chooses what is right, not what is easy. This choice strengthens self-discipline. Mental toughness grows because they learn that pain is not the enemy, it is a tool. Stoic identity solidifies when she recognizes that integrity is more valuable than comfort. And this reflection paves the way for new practices. He compares integrity to an internal compass that never fails. When a person follows this compass, they avoid impulsive decisions, sabotage, and regrets. This generates emotional control. Inner peace increases because she lives in alignment, not contradiction. Self-discipline becomes more natural as choices become consistent. And this new balance paves the way for understanding that peace of mind is something that can be trained. The mentor reminds us that being whole also means accepting our own flaws without hiding from them. He says that people who own up to their mistakes build emotional strength. This honesty strengthens mental toughness. Stoic identity grows because it lives without masks. Inner peace appears when it stops running away from the truth. And this inner courage prepares the mind to train serenity every day. He makes an important point. People who live seeking happiness forget that happiness is fragile, but consistency is unshakable. When a person focuses on being whole, they create internal pillars that sustain any storm. This generates self-discipline. Emotional control increases because they do not get lost in fleeting sensations. Mental toughness arises as a consequence of this alignment, and this strength opens space for the next learning. The mentor explains that being whole also means living according to values and not momentary emotions. He says that emotions change quickly, but values remain. Those who live this way build inner peace. Stoic identity becomes deeper because she lives what she believes. Self-discipline becomes lighter because she has a clear why. And this clarity naturally leads to the idea that peace of mind is a daily practice. At the end of this topic, the mentor reinforces that happiness is unstable, but integrity is an anchor. Those who live by the anchor find strength, focus, and presence. Mental toughness grows with each aligned decision. Emotional control improves because the mind stops chasing sensations. Inner peace becomes a more continuous state. And now the person is ready to understand that peace of mind is not a privilege, it is practice. The mentor begins by saying that many people think peace of mind is something that some are born with, and others are not. He laughs and explains that this is an illusion. Peace of mind is a skill, like playing an instrument or learning a language. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. This perspective creates inner peace because it removes the feeling of helplessness. And it develops mental toughness by showing that attitude is more important than luck. He explains that the mind, like the body, needs constant training. If a person does not train, internal chaos takes over. But if they practice daily, even for a few minutes, they begin to develop emotional control. Self-discipline is strengthened because they perceive real progress. And Stoic identity grows when they see that calmness is not a gift. It is a muscle that is built through repetition. The mentor likes to compare peace of mind to the gym. You don't train one day and stay strong forever. It's repetition. In small actions, breathe before reacting, observe before interpreting, pause before deciding. These practices generate inner peace. Mental toughness increases with each conscious choice. And this process completely changes the way a person conducts their own life. He suggests simple exercises, short meditation, reading Marcus Aurelius for 5 minutes, writing down 3 things you can control in the day. These practices build emotional control. Self-discipline expands because you begin to see concrete results. Stoic identity arises when you realize that you are mastering your own mind. And this new path opens space to deepen the reason behind each daily action. The mentor reminds us that peace is not the absence of problems. It is the ability to remain whole even in the face of them. He says that if a person expects to have a perfect life in order to have inner peace, they will never have it. But if they decide to train their mind precisely on bad days, they will create true mental toughness. Self-discipline grows when they practice even when they don't feel like it. And this attitude prepares the heart to live with more presence. He comments that the practice of serenity also involves knowing how to ignore what does not matter. A person's mind only has room for a limited number of concerns. So choosing where to focus your attention is a fundamental part of training. This generates emotional control. Inner peace increases because it stops being intoxicated by unnecessary noise. And Stoic identity becomes more stable with this conscious filtering. The mentor reinforces that peace of mind is not a continuous state, but a daily construction. Some days will be peaceful, others will be challenging. The important thing is to maintain a commitment to the practice. This consistency develops self-discipline. Mental toughness grows as it faces bad days with the same intention as good days. And this understanding provides valuable emotional maturity for life. He uses a practical example. Someone who wants to learn to play the guitar does not give up the instrument because their fingers hurt on the first day. They practice, persevere, and improve. It is the same with the mind. The person who persists creates inner peace. Emotional control comes from repetition, not perfection. Stoic identity grows when one sees oneself as disciplined in this process. And this evolution naturally leads one to reflect on what is really worthwhile in life. The mentor says that peace of mind depends more on what you remove than what you add. Fewer distractions, less reactivity, less drama, and more intention, more conscious action, more focus on what matters. This internal cleansing creates self-discipline. Mental toughness increases because the person learns not to let minor turbulence divert them from their course. And this clarity sets the stage for the video's final thought. At the end of this topic, the mentor reinforces that peace is not the privilege of the enlightened. It is the result of daily choices. Each conscious breath is a brick. Each avoided reaction is another. And so, brick by brick, the person builds a lighter and more stable life. Inner peace grows with practice. Stoic identity solidifies. And now it is ready for the last Stoic reminder. Life is finite, and that is the best news there is. The mentor begins by saying that this phrase seems brutal at first glance, but it is precisely this brutality that awakens awareness. He explains that remembering one's own finitude restores urgency to life. This urgency does not create anxiety, it creates focus. Inner peace arises when a person understands that they do not need guarantees to live well. Mental toughness grows when they choose to act despite uncertainty. And this clarity awakens a Stoic identity that is stronger than ever. He comments that life passes too quickly to be lived on autopilot. When people realize that each day is a non-renewable gift, they change the way they exist. Self-discipline increases because they stop postponing important choices. Inner peace appears when they abandon trivial concerns. And this emotional maturity begins to transform not only what they do, but who they are. The mentor reinforces that accepting death gives real value to life. He says that when someone understands that time is finite, every gesture gains meaning. This awareness creates emotional control because they stop reacting to everything as if it were urgent. Mental toughness grows because she begins to face challenges with more serenity. And this internal change creates space for a more intentional life. He reminds us that living with this understanding is not living in fear. It is living with presence. The person stops running away from their responsibilities and begins to take them on with self-discipline. She creates a solid Stoic identity because she begins to act with consistency and purpose. Inner peace arises when they see that they have nothing to lose by living authentically. And this alignment paves the way for even deeper reflections. The mentor points out that awareness of death is a tool for cutting out the excess. He says that when people remember that time is short, they choose their battles better. This develops emotional control. Mental toughness is strengthened because she learns to direct her energy only to what really matters. And this clarity changes her relationship with conflicts, fears, and external expectations. He uses practical examples. Someone who keeps postponing a dream because it's not the right time yet. The mentor says that the only real moment is now. When people understand this, their self-discipline rises to a higher level. Inner peace appears when they accept that they cannot control tomorrow. And Stoic identity grows when they begin to act as if each day were the final chapter, with courage, intention, and presence. The mentor points out that recognizing finitude increases gratitude. Simple things, a sunset, a sincere conversation, a good cup of coffee, come to life. This perception creates emotional control because the person stops dramatizing what does not deserve drama. Mental toughness grows because they see value even in difficult moments. And this new vision gives depth to the way they structure their own existence. He reminds us that death is also an invitation to let go of what weighs us down. People, habits, fears, stories that no longer make sense. Detachment generates inner peace. Self-discipline grows because they learn to prioritize what is essential. Stoic identity is strengthened when they choose to live more lightly. And this mental liberation opens space for the conclusion that follows. The mentor reinforces that by accepting death, people stop wasting their lives. They begin to live with openness, courage, and intention. This generates emotional control. Mental toughness increases because they face life head-on. Inner peace grows because they stop fighting the inevitable. And it is at this point that they finally understand that living well is an act of presence, not anxiety. At the end of this topic, the mentor states that remembering death is, paradoxically, the key to living fully. It awakens presence, focus, and authenticity. Self-discipline becomes natural because every action matters. Stoic identity is complete. Inner peace grows. And now, with all these teachings, the person is ready for the final conclusion, a call to live with courage and act with awareness. The mentor concludes by saying that nothing changes until you change. He states, in a firm voice, that the strength you admired in others has always been within you. It just needed to be awakened. Every lesson here is not meant to be pretty. It is meant to be applied. Inner peace does not appear by accident. Mental toughness is built through daily choices. And self-discipline grows when you stop running away from life and start living it with intention. He looks at you as if giving you a mission and asks, what are you going to do after this video? Are you going to go back to the same habits, or are you finally going to take control of your mind? This question is not rhetorical. It is an invitation to awakening. The emotional control you seek is just a few steps away, and you know it. The Stoic identity you dream of having begins with the next decision you make. Nothing external can do this for you. Only you can. The mentor insists, if you don't apply what you've learned here, nothing changes. But if you do, absolutely everything changes. It is in this choice that life is transformed. When you decide to breathe before reacting, act before complaining, build before blaming, the world ceases to dominate you. Inner peace grows in silence. Mental toughness is formed in adversity, and you begin to become someone rare, someone who lives with strength and purpose. He then provokes you again. What's stopping you from starting now? Fear, laziness, excuses. That question ignites something in your chest, because you know you've wasted too much time on distractions. The mentor says that self-discipline is not born of motivation. It is born of responsibility, and that every minute wasted is a piece of your life that will never come back. The decision is yours, and yours alone. In the end, the mentor makes the final invitation. If this video moved you, don't let that transformation die when it ends. He asks you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, not as a favor, but as a commitment to your own evolution. Here, you will learn to protect your mind, strengthen your identity, and build a life of presence, strength, and direction. He concludes by saying, you are not here by chance. Keep going. The best version of yourself is waiting for you.